Hello, I'm Colleen Pearl the Cool Crone, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is all about the solar eclipse in Sagittarius on December 4th. Today we will discuss the new moon solar eclipse in Sag on December 4th at 7:42 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can always Google to get the actual time for your location on the planet. On December 4th, the new moon in Sagittarius will be at 12 degrees 21 minutes, and it is a solar eclipse. Now, Sagittarius is a masculine sign. It's mutable, it's ruled by fire, and the ruling planet is Jupiter. When the moon is in Sagittarius, we're very active, we're optimistic, we're impulsive, we're expansive, and we're seeking the truth. Now, who do we know that has a moon in Sagittarius? It is none other than Emma Watson. Emma Watson is an advocate for women's rights, and she has also turned her focus to the fashion industry. She is promoting sustainable, eco-friendly practices within the fashion industry. She's a UN Women's Goodwill Ambassador, as well as having been named to the BOF 500, which is the definitive professional index of people shaping the $2.4 trillion fashion industry. And these members are hand-selected by the editors of the Business of Fashion. So what should we do at the time of the new moon? So I hope you don't think that I'm starting to sound like a broken record, because every new moon and every full moon brings about the same types of things that we should be focusing on. For a new moon, it's a time for new beginnings. It's time to explore your potential. It's time to look back at your important dreams and claim them. It's time to notice what is triggering you emotionally in your life. And it's time to tap into those emotional issues and either release them or heal from them at this time. So let's talk a little bit about what eclipses actually are. A solar eclipse occurs during the new moon phase when the sun and moon are conjunct, or to put it another way, when they occupy the exact same degree of the same zodiac sign. The moon, orbiting around the Earth, crosses the path of the Earth, orbiting around the sun, causing the sun to be obscured or eclipsed from our view. In a total solar eclipse, we can see the view that I show now on this slide. Not only does this provide us with a dramatic celestial display, but it impacts our lives here on Earth. The ancients believed that eclipses heralded the end of the world. Then, as they began to see that it was a recurring event, they linked it to the birth or death of a king or queen. They were right. Many royal rulers are indeed born during an eclipse. Eclipses are major events astrologically. They come in pairs. Usually it's a solar eclipse on a new moon, followed by a lunar eclipse on the next full moon. But for us, we had our lunar eclipse in Taurus first, and now we're having the corresponding solar eclipse on the new moon in Sag. That lunar eclipse in Taurus that we just went through began a 2-year cycle which will continue through Taurus and Scorpio pairings for eclipses. To get a hint about how this eclipse is going to affect you, look back 19 years to December 4th, 2002. That will tell you which area of life will be affected, and also the types of things that will be highlighted during this event. Now, eclipses don't usually influence events that happen right on the same date as the eclipse. Things can happen 1 month, 1 week, or 1 day before the eclipse, or they can happen 1 day, 1 week, 1 month after the eclipse. But more importantly, eclipses set up a chain reaction of events, or a major event that has an impact on other things in our lives. So really, eclipses kind of set up the chapters to our lives and show us where in a particular area of our life things may change. In astrology, the darkness associated with a solar eclipse also casts a shadow on our lives. Solar eclipses, because they happen at the new moon, are all about taking care of unfinished personal business, getting honest with yourself, and planting seeds for the future. That's the new moon part of it. The boost from the eclipse, which is solar powered, is all about starting your new journey, and the best way of preparing for something new is to release something old. So let's talk now about the energy of the solar eclipse and how you can put it to good use in your life. Eclipses are windows of opportunity. When the degree of an eclipse connects to a personal degree in your chart, it can bring about the push to do something you were meant to do, something that will allow you to grow. Eclipses often bring about the opportunity to do things that you feel you cannot do or are reluctant to do. You may have been avoiding these things thinking that you're not ready or capable, but then the universe arranges the perfect situation where it's your choice to do it, and it's really no longer useful to resist. Without eclipses, we might never live our best life or live up to our unique potential. Generally, there are more positive than negative planetary influences during this eclipse, so for most people, the eclipse will have a positive effect. However, to capitalize on this solar eclipse energy, you should wrap up any unfinished projects, not just in the handyman physical sense, but internally, at the more emotional soul level. Do a little work on that issue of forgiving your sister, allowing yourself to believe you really deserve that raise, or something that you've been avoiding or putting off for a long time. It's time to move on, and the solar eclipse is pushing you through that door. You need to be resolved on these issues so that new things can happen. Before you bring new things into your life, you've got to take stock and remove things that you no longer need or use. This makes room for the new piece. Any good professional organizer will tell you this. Now, if you hire a professional cleaner, the first thing they'll do is take everything out of that packed hallway closet. They'll lay it on the floor and ask you, what have you not used in the last year, in the last 6 months, or ever? And then they'll help you get rid of those things. So making room for growth is key at the time of an eclipse. Think of your life in this same way. If you're obsessing over an old relationship, you've got to find a way to move on. If you can't quite forgive yourself for not finishing that crocheted afghan you've had hanging around since last year, you've got to let it go and look at moving on to new things. Things that you can achieve now with your newfound perspective and in your current circumstances. Let go of the past. Eclipses can be a great time for letting go, so that when you plant new seeds, things will grow. In order for new things to thrive in our lives, there has to be room for it to grow. If you have a heart, mind, soul, or garage full of junk, nothing new will take root. Anyone born under a solar eclipse tends to be fearless of both physical danger and the opinion of others. They're direct and unrelentingly brusque, and can be ruthless in dealing with people who cross them. It is said that these individuals tend to be the source of tumultuous events in their own lives. So, who was born during an eclipse who's alive now that we might know about? Well, Donald Trump, for one. He was born under a solar eclipse, and I have to say, he really fits the description. There's another person, though, who's a little younger, who was also born under a solar eclipse and is quite prominent in our lives today. Maybe not in this country, but in the UK, Prince William is a really key figure. Now, I can't say that he starts tumultuous events in his own life, but certainly he is at the center of many tumultuous events that have taken place in his life. Now, his wife, Kate Middleton, happens to have been born under a lunar eclipse. How's that for a coincidence? Prince Harry and Prince Charles are both born with the moon very close to the North Node, but not under eclipses. Prince Charlotte and Prince Louis have the same configuration. Now, Queen Elizabeth is not born under an eclipse, but has the North Node tightly conjunct her ascendant in Capricorn, and Saturn, which is the ruler of Capricorn, is conjunct her midheaven. And the soon-to-be Prince Archie has the same configuration in his chart. Isn't that weird? Now, this particular eclipse also happens to be conjunct the ascendant in the United States chart, if you go by the Sibley chart, which is the one I use. Now, if we look back in history for the United States, we'll see that on 9/11, Pluto was exactly conjunct our ascendant. That's the same degree as this eclipse. So now that this eclipse is hitting that degree, what will this mean? Will this be a rebirth for our country? Will this mean that there's a cleansing and a clearing of our systems? Will it mean a turning point for the way our country is run? I guess we'll have to just wait and see. Now let's look at the other planetary placements taking place on December 4th during this eclipse. The new moon and the sun will be conjunct Mercury. The new moon and the sun will be sextile Saturn, and the new moon and the sun will be quincunx Uranus and in opposition to black moon Lilith. The new moon conjuncting Mercury means that we will be talking about this eclipse quite a bit. We will be communicating with others about this and whatever influences that we're feeling. With the sextile to Saturn, it means that finally we might be able to move a little closer to some of the changes that we've been trying to accomplish all through the Saturn square Uranus aspect. With the quincunx to Uranus, it means that things will be unusual and people will be pushed to create situations that are a little bit awkward but may bring about eventual change. And with the new moon configuration in opposition to Lilith, it could mean that secrets are revealed that are very necessary to the changes that we are trying to effect right now. Now let's go on to the predictions for each of the signs. And when I'm going through the predictions, I'm going to be really looking at the Sun in Sag, Mercury in Sag, Saturn in Aquarius, Uranus in Taurus, and I think that's enough. Hi, I thought I'd come back for the predictions for each sign. Let's look at the fire signs first because this is a fire sign eclipse. Sagittarius rising. So this is your new moon. So this is your annual new moon. Big deal. It's usually coming around your birthday time, or if you're a Sag rising, it's just a really big emphasis for you. And it's also an eclipse in your first house if you have Sag rising. So you've got the Sun, Moon, and Mercury all in your first house. And Sag, you are a sign that likes to study things, likes to learn new things, but you're not satisfied to stay within your own backyard. You really want to learn about the world. And with this eclipse in your first house, you've got an opportunity to start a new chapter of your life, of whatever you want to go on with your life. It's also on the 1st and 7th house axes, which means that it's going to involve partnerships. So while you may be getting ready to do a big study of whatever you're moving on to in your life, your partner is going to be involved as well. Now, if you're not in a relationship, this could mean that you're setting things up so that you could be in a relationship. You may be finishing school. You may be starting school. You may be starting a study of different cultures or different types of cooking or languages. You may be starting something having to do with the internet or publishing or the law. Whatever this new chapter is going to be, this is very momentous for you in your life, Sagittarius. Now you've got Aquarius in the third house, which means that whatever learning you're going to be doing, you're really going to knuckle down and tackle it and be very serious about it. But Aquarius rules your third house, so you're probably very interested in things having to do with the stars and space, or at the very least, electricity and the internet. You've got Uranus in your sixth house, another space age, electrical, internet kind of planet. So I'm going to say that you're very serious about studying things having to do with the internet or space or electricity, or things having to do with inspiration, things that inspire people. So it could be that you want to be an inspirational speaker, or you want to learn or start a business on the internet, or something to do with electricity, or something to do with young people and social media. That would be another way to interpret this. So it's a big chapter for you, Sagittarius, and I just want to emphasize that for you. And if you're looking at your chart and trying to figure out how all of these things fit into your actual natal chart, maybe you need an astrological reading with a professional astrologer. This would be a good time to do it, because you have an eclipse coming up in your first house, and you probably do need to make some big life plans. All right, let's go on to the next fire sign. That's going to be Aries. Aries, you have the main configuration of this eclipse happening in your ninth house. So you are also looking at learning of some kind, or travel overseas, or participation in the legal industry, the publishing industry, things having to do with the internet, but also things in a large context. So Sagittarius rules your ninth house. So anything that you're doing having to do with those ninth house topics is going to be large. You have Uranus in your second house, which means that your income, your talents, your resources have to do with, I want to say, space age things. That's a very 60s term, but I am a child of the 60s, so that's what came to my mind. Uranus is that kind of space age planet. You are very comfortable with things having to do with electricity or space, travel in space, air travel, just traveling by flight, by helicopters, by jets. You're very, very comfortable with that. And that may have a lot to do with your stream of income. You may be a person that doesn't say no when it comes to anything new. You may be very, very up for things that change. So perhaps your line of work has to do with things like audiovisual, hardware or components or installations, or you're a consultant for things like that. So anything to do with electricity, or things that run on electricity, or things that run on the internet, or things that have to do with space. You are, though, ruled by Taurus on your second house, and so you want that income to be steady. You want that to be a reliable source of income. So most likely you have started a business, or you work for a business where maybe you're one of the partners, and you can really control what goes on with your own income. You've got Saturn in the 11th house with Aquarius there. So even the groups that you're a part of have to do with this Uranian kind of energy, having to do with new things, space things, electrical things, the stars, things that affect large groups of people. So there's kind of a theme here for you, Aries, that things are going to affect people in a very large way, in a very global way, and it's going to involve things having to do with electricity or computers or the internet or actual space. For Leo, the eclipse for you is happening in your fifth house, which is also a fire sign house. It's the Leo house. So this is going to be a very happy eclipse for you. This could be the new chapter for you where you bring new kids into your family, and it looks like multiple kids. So maybe not kids coming in by just giving birth or adopting a child, but perhaps this has to do with you bringing more children into your life with a group that you become affiliated with, like coaching or teaching in a new school where you're working much more one-on-one with children, or perhaps you're fostering kids or doing some kind of work where you're really going to be involved with children or sports or games of chance in some way. you have Saturn in Aquarius on the 7th house right now, Leo. And so you're going to be very committed with your partner as far as these activities have to do with children. This is going to be a delightful, happy time for you, where bringing these younger people into your cosmos, into your life, into your family, into your home is going to be a real joy. And you're really going to work with your partner to be very committed to this work. Now, Uranus is in your 10th house right now. So there probably have been changes to your career in the last 4 or 5 years, but there also has been probably a change of emphasis in your career. And even though you have Taurus there and you're very steady and you don't probably like change in the career too much, the type of career that you choose probably has something to do with very large groups or very large organizations, or it has to do with space or electricity or the internet in some way. So during this eclipse, you're going to be looking at new things that could have a ripple effect throughout your life and really affect your partner and your career at the same time. Now let's go on to the air signs. So Gemini. Gemini, you have the Sun, Moon, and Mercury for this eclipse happening in your 7th house. And this really puts this eclipse front and center in your radar. So you are really being affected, you and your partner are really being affected by this eclipse in a profound way. This will be the beginning of a new chapter for your relationship especially, and it doesn't mean the end or the beginning of a relationship only. It could be the beginning of a new relationship. It could be the new beginning of a chapter in your life with your partner that is very different from what has gone before. If you look back to the year 2002, that's when we had pretty much the exact same eclipse, and it will have affected or hit in your natal chart in the exact same location in your chart. Now, the other planets moving around the eclipse will be different because they'll be the 2002 planets, but the eclipse itself will be shown in the same area of your chart, so you can tell by that eclipse from 2002 what area of life this eclipse will affect now. Now, if you're too young to even remember that, or if you've had several eclipses, if you're older, you'll really be able to see what went on that eclipse before in 2002. Saturn will be in your 9th house, which means that you may be undertaking new studies having to do with things overseas, things in other cultures, other languages, other cuisines, or things having to do with the publishing industry, the internet, space, space travel, electrical work, new things. And it will have to do with larger organizations. Uranus in your 12th house, Gemini, is going to mean that your dreams are inspirational, that you get a lot of inspiration from things just bubbling up to the surface. It is said that Thomas Edison used this technique to invent many of his inventions, that he would be working on a problem very intensely and very hard, and at the end of the day he would just be like, oh, I'm just going to go to sleep and let my little elves come and give me the answer. He would go to sleep, he would find the inspiration in his dreams, and he gets up in the morning and he's invented the light bulb. So you may be doing the same kind of thing, Gemini. You may be using your dreams as inspiration in order to create new things, and that is surely going to influence what's going on in your 9th house with Saturn, but also in your 7th house with your partner and this eclipse energy. Now we're going on to Libra. This is happening in your 3rd house, Libra. So it's not so much that it's, life-changing in the way that it's, bringing in a new relationship or ending a relationship or anything, but it is getting you talking, and it is really putting a focus on social ideas and your ideas about your world, about your neighborhood, about siblings. So you may be reaching out to your siblings a lot more after this eclipse. You may be discovering things about your siblings after this eclipse, but it's going to focus on siblings or your everyday routine. Saturn's going to be in your 5th house, so that means there's going to be a lot more responsibilities pertaining to children and sports and games of chance in your life. And Uranus is going to be in your 8th house, where it affects your joint resources or the study of the occult and things that are hidden. So not a huge impact for you, Libra rising, with this, although I will predict that if you do like a Ancestor.com or a 23andMe or one of those DNA searches, that you may find that you have siblings somewhere out there in the world, and this may be the time that you are notified or that you discover that. Now we go on to Aquarius rising. Aquarius, you have the eclipse happening in your 11th house, in the traditional Aquarius house. So lots of new ideas are starting for you. You're finding out that there are groups out there that you can be a part of. Maybe you're changing your involvement with groups, finding multiple groups that you want to be involved with. And you may also find that your relationship to these groups is being taken much more seriously than it has been in the past. You've got Saturn in the 1st house in Aquarius, and it's been there most of 2021, a little bit of 2020, and it's going to continue to be there well into 2022. Saturn in your 1st house puts you on a serious path. So anything that you commit to fully. And with Aquarius rising, you will be committing to groups or associations that have to do with primarily humanitarian objectives. So the Sun, Moon, and Mercury in the 11th house already gives you the idea that you want to be a big part of groups from this point on in your life. But having Saturn in your 1st house means that you're committing fully to those groups as long as they align with your own humanitarian objectives. Very exciting time for you, Aquarius. Now your ruling planet, Uranus, is in your 4th house for family, homes, beginnings and endings. So you may be thinking primarily about your own family, your parents, your home structure, your family structure in connection with these groups. So it all kind of goes together, Aquarius, when we're talking about this eclipse. And now let's go on to the earth signs. Taurus, you're the 1st earth sign up. And I want to start out by saying, yes, Uranus is in your 1st house, where it's been for a while. Now, this puts the focus on the Saturn-Uranus square for you, even though you are going through the eclipse. The eclipse is happening in your 8th house for joint resources. So this eclipse is not what's really rocking your world right now, Taurus, unless you have planets that are at that critical 12 degrees of Sagittarius. But what it will really be focusing on for you is the resolution of the square between Saturn and Uranus that is coming so close from about the 18th of December and perfecting on the 24th of December. So for you, looking at your career and how your career really affects the world, I think is what's going to be the big focus for you, Taurus. Now, the eclipse happening in the 8th house is going to, like I said, affect your joint resources or study of metaphysical topics or things having to do with hidden subjects, occult subjects in general. But having Uranus there in your 1st house, Taurus, just means that you're getting ready to learn how to change. And that may be a life lesson that you came here to do anyway. People with Taurus rising very often are very stubborn and they don't like change and they want things to be one way, their way. But with Uranus there in your 1st house, you have been forced to abide change for like 5 years now. So you may really be getting to understand how change can be beneficial for you in your life. Then we come to Virgo rising, and you've got the Sun, Moon, and Mercury in your 4th house. This is one of the cardinal houses, so this is going to have a big effect on you, Virgo. You may have people coming and going within the family structure. You may be having somebody move out of the house, somebody move into the house, probably not your spouse or partner, but maybe a child, or maybe a child returning to your house. You've got Saturn in the 6th house in Aquarius squaring Uranus and Taurus in your 9th house. So this could speak of somebody coming to the end of an educational process, like you. It could mean that you've been really at your job for a very long time and you're thinking about breaking out and changing that by going and getting more training. And this aspect, this square of Uranus and Saturn, has been going on for a long time. So you've been mulling this over for a very long time. With the timing of this eclipse, this could be when you decide to actually make the plan, make the commitment, sign up for the courses, and really make whatever changes are necessary. It's the beginning of a new chapter, and this will probably coincide with changes to the family structure. This could have to do with your parents or actual children of your own that live in the home, but something about the family structure is going to be affected by the decisions that you're making as a result of this Uranus and Saturn in square aspect. Then we have Capricorn rising. Capricorn, you have the eclipse along with Mercury all sitting in your 12th house for your dreams and your subconscious and spiritual work. I think that this is going to be an interesting eclipse for you. It could be that you're finding that things that you learn in your dreams are very helpful to your fulfillment in life. You've got Saturn in the 2nd house in Aquarius squaring Uranus in the 5th house in Taurus. This is probably not going to be an earth-shaking eclipse for you, Capricorn, because it's not hitting any of the cardinal houses for you unless you have planets that are close by of 12 degrees in Sagittarius. If most of your planets are more in the cardinal signs, then this is not going to affect you very much at all. Now, Saturn in Aquarius and Uranus in Taurus are also in houses that are not making big impacts on your life. However, Saturn in your 2nd house, where it's been for a while now, has made you very diligent, and you've been working very hard at probably increasing your income, but by working for people who have good humanitarian practices or good humanitarian objectives aligned with their companies. Or you could have started your own company where you really align with personally held humanitarian beliefs and objectives. Uranus in your 5th house is a wild card. Taurus in your 5th house probably is bringing you into contact with all sorts of unusual people that you have a lot of fun with. Could be people that you play sports with. It could be people that you play the stock market with. Maybe you're a part of a club that invests in the stock market. It would just mean that you have fun and you attract highly unusual people to hang out with. It could be as simple as that. However, at the time of this eclipse, Uranus and Saturn really click with the eclipse. They have those aspects to the Sun and the Moon and Mercury. So you may be finding that the influence of Saturn and Uranus on the eclipse is quite profound, but it isn't actually starting that new chapter in your life that is so life-changing. Now let's go on to the water signs. We've got Cancer. So Cancer, we have Sun, Moon, and Mercury in your 6th house, so this is going to affect your job. Now this could be a new chapter in your job. You could be changed to a different location, you could be transferred, you could be promoted, you could change jobs, you could have new people come into your job. There's a lot of different ways that this could play out. But you've got Uranus in your house of hopes, dreams, wishes, and groups. So Saturn is in your 3rd house for ideas and learning, and especially early learning, and also siblings and your neighborhood. So how does this really affect you? Well, this could give you new opportunities on the job for learning. You could have new opportunities for learning old and new systems in your job, which could make you the perfect candidate for a promotion that's going to come up later, like in 2022, in the next few months. You may not even know about this promotion or this position being available yet. It could be somebody just surprisingly retires and there's a vacancy there that you can slide into if you just have a little bit of extra training. So something like that is what I'm seeing happening for you, Cancer. Also, it could be that your personal interests outside of work make you the perfect candidate for this potential opening. Saturn in the third house means that you're very devoted or you have obligations towards your siblings. You could see separation from your siblings. Maybe you live a great distance from them, but you work very hard at staying in contact with them. So there's a lot of different ways that you could interpret this, Cancer, but I think that for this eclipse, it's not going to be so earth-shaking, but it is going to be some changes in the job arena. And then we have Scorpio. Also not going to be a super earth-shaking eclipse for you, Scorpio, but we do have the Sun, Moon, and Mercury in your second house, and this could affect your income. Second house is the paycheck that we pull, also resources and our own talents. So you may find during this eclipse, Scorpio, that you discover some new talent that you didn't really know that you had. Uranus is in a quincunx aspect to the Sun, Moon, and Mercury, and this means that something surprising could happen as a result of your partner influencing you in some way. Also, you have Saturn in the fourth house, so there could be some kind of changes to your family structure, more in the ways of an obligation or a responsibility, a new responsibility that comes into light during this eclipse, because Saturn and Uranus do have direct connections to the planets of the eclipse. For Pisces, we have Sun, Moon, and Mercury in the 8th house for other people's money, for joint resources, for the occult, for metaphysical things. We also have Saturn in the 12th house, which usually means a separation of some kind. Somebody has to take a big long trip and they have to be separated. Not you necessarily taking that trip, but you could be separated from somebody who has to take a very long trip. Also, the Saturn-Uranus square is very prominent here. The Uranus falls into the 3rd house, Saturn falls into the 12th house, but they both have very specific aspects to the eclipse planets. So I'm going to say that something about the separation by Saturn has a direct influence on the joint resources house and on your joint resources in general, and that the 3rd house Uranus has something to do with your ideas about that and the way you think about that. So that's what I have for all of the signs and the eclipse and what you can expect from this eclipse. For some of you, it's going to be earth-shaking. For some of you, not so much. But I'm so glad that you watched this video and that you joined me today. It really, really warms my heart when I get your comments. So please leave lots of comments down below. And if you're looking for a reading, my information is in the description box. Basically, you can send me an email at coolcrone444@gmail.com and I'll get back to you with all the information that you need. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.